Episode 35 of the Interpretation Station is called to order. Welcome everybody to a new episode. Yes, it's the Wham Bam Hvala Rolande format for all my Jedi-speaking viewers. Welcome to the show, everybody. So today we're going to complete the full circle. We've had one for you from the Croatian dialect of Jedi, one from the Montenegrin, the Bosnian, and so we've got Serbia today. We have got its speech by the President Aleksandar Vucic. It's actually from his speech to the general debate in September last year. It was done via video recording. I actually posted it this morning on the LinkedIn group, so you can see the copy of it there. And yeah, it's got a lot of good core vocabulary, you might say, as we will see. When I first did it, actually, this morning, I got up this morning, had my breakfast, and then I started doing it. I realized I'd printed off the Cyrillic version. I did the whole page from the Cyrillic version, and then it occurred to me that not all of you guys might read Cyrillic, so I had to print it off all over again and do it in Latinica, so everyone will be able to understand it. There's no excuses for any of you. Okay, so yes, with that, turn your eyes then to the screen. I'll disappear down into the corner, and I will take you through it. Okay, so the first thing I start you off with, just something basic here. Osnivanje Ujedinjenih Nacija. Just the founding. Well, we really talk about the founding of the United Nations. Yeah, I guess you could talk about the establishment of the UN, but founding always is just the best go-to word there. Okay, značajan jubilej za čitavo čovečanstvo. Now, I don't like using the word jubilee in English generally. The only things that we tend to talk the only time we tend to use jubilee in English is when we talk about the Queen's Diamond Jubilee or Golden Jubilee. Tends to be to do with weddings often, so I prefer to generally avoid the word jubilee. So I've gone here with milestone, a major milestone. I've suggested here. Major is a good sort of adjective collocation with a milestone. Okay, principe sadržane u povelji Ujedinjenih Nacija. So, okay, you could have just said contained in the UN Charter. I thought I'd give you a slightly higher register word here, which is enshrined. So when we talk about charters, resolutions, that's again a verb, a collocation that we often use. It's a very important one, enshrined or set forth in, for example. Okay, and then in this paragraph, he quotes a lot of stuff from the UN Charter itself, some very important concepts, okay? So these are good to know, okay? Obviously, okay, sovereign equality of states. Odricanje od upotrebe sile. So as I say, when I first got up this morning, the best thing that came to me was to refrain from the use of force. That's a pretty standard formula. Another good alternative, higher register again, is to eschewing the use of force, and it's a bit quicker to say perhaps than refraining from. So eschewing, think about that as well. This is very important again here, I guess. Nemešanje unutrašnje stvari drugih država. I guess this is very important in the context of everything to do with Kosovo. So non-interference in the internal affairs of other states. Okay, again, these are respecting sovereignty, territorial integrity. These are arguments that are often cited in relation to the issue with Kosovo. Now, this is again mirno rešavanje sporova. So I've given you here peaceful dispute resolution. Instead of resolution, you could also have settlement. Now, I've put a star here actually next to the peaceful because it's interesting. If you actually look at the UN Charter, and I definitely advise you to read it right through if you're sort of working at a government level. The actual wording they use in the Charter is, I put it here, pacific. They call it peaceful dispute resolution. So if you really want to show off to your peers next time, say pacific dispute resolution. I sometimes do, just for a laugh. Just, it's you know. Sounds more interesting than peaceful. Uvažavanje različitosti. So I had to think about this one a little bit. Initially, I was thinking of diversity for različitosti, but I guess this whole concept of diversity, it's something relatively new. And I think when the charter was written, I think the idea is more to do with respect for differences. So I would stick perhaps to differences rather than diversity. So diversity is perhaps more like raznolikost. Aktuelnost, just a reminder here, relevance is by far the best solution there. You can say pertinence, but relevance is, you can't go wrong with relevance. Krupne promene, so I've tried to give you here a couple of one-word solutions for these two. Upheavals or transformations. I think with those you don't, I don't think you really need an adjective to go with those. I think they convey a sufficient sense of importance by themselves that you can do without an adjective. Koje dono 21. vek, so brought on by the 21st century, brought about by... You say this a lot, actually, this brought on by in English. You tend to use it more in the passive than you do, funnily enough, in the active. It's actually, okay, it's one of these sort of phrasal verbs things. It's quite high. It's a very natural sounding thing in English to say, the upheavals at international level brought on by the 21st century. Or you could talk about things that have been brought on by the COVID pandemic. So you might not even notice it, like when people are saying, but you use a linguistic nuance that English native speakers use a lot. Okay, jačaju potrebu. So I've given you here to underscore the need. Okay, another alternative might be to highlight the need. I think that's better than to say strengthen the need. We wouldn't really say to strengthen or bolster. I think with needs, you want to, as I say, highlight or underscore them. I've bracketed here Ujedinjenih nacija just because we've already talked about the UN Charter in the first paragraph. So if you're in a hurry and you want to save a bit of time, I mean, the Charter, it speaks for itself. So you could skip, I think, the United Nations here. Svima poznatih osnovnih principa. So I've given you here, okay, universally recognized core principles. That's a very good word for osnovne, a bit different from fundamental or founding principles. Core, it's also good because it's a very quick solution. By the way, I should say one thing here. Now, I realize that, okay, some of the solutions here I give are ones that I would use at my work. Now, I realize that you're working in particular governments or ministries or certainly national organizations, perhaps in those organizations in the Serbian government, for example, there are sort of strict guidelines for exactly what English renderings you can use for specific terminology. I mean, so I looked actually for this statement. If you go to the website of the Serbian president, you get it in the full statement in English. There's a translation into English. It's a pretty good translation. There's certain things I would definitely question in it. But as I say, I realize that, if you're working in these governments and you're sort of being monitored by your sort of superiors, they are perhaps looking out for you to use set formulas at times. So again, I can't, if that's what they want to hear, then obviously you've just got to fall into line with what they want to hear. So as I say, if I was at work doing this at the UN, say, I think I would have probably a bit more margin. So that's why I can sort of give you these sometimes more slightly exotic solutions. So I want you to just keep that in mind when I'm giving you these ideas. Okay, so moving on. Obeležavamo I 75. godišnjicu. So I've given you a couple of solutions here. We're marking the 75th anniversary or commemorating it. I don't think we would celebrate it. That would sound wrong, to be honest. Okay, and then here, predstavnik države koji je podneo ogromna stradanja I žrtve. So I've gone here for that we endured, the country endured great suffering and losses. You see, you wouldn't really, I was thinking the žrtve, okay, victims is the standard, obviously, solution for žrtva, but you don't really endure victims, suffered victims. We just wouldn't we wouldn't quite phrase it like that. So I've given you what I think is the most sort of natural sounding thing in English, like enduring suffering and losses. Once again, though, I would stress that perhaps your superior wants to hear the word victim. Okay, and if your superior wants to hear that word victim, I guess you've got to give him victim. But this is the most natural way of expressing this in English. Okay, svi smo zajedno dužni da čuvamo sećanje. Okay, so this is a good word, duty bound. Okay, not just, so duty hyphen bound, we're duty bound to do this. Or another way of expressing this, the onus is on us to keep alive the memory, but then you have to turn the syntax around a bit. So this is a good expression to remember, duty bound. And I also think it's stronger than something than saying like we are obliged. Okay, I'm not a big fan of obliged for that sort of thing. Duty bound is the one is a really, as I say, the best that I can think of. Okay, čuvamo sećanje. I didn't mark anything here, and these two things, izvučemo pouke, these are sort of standard expression, keep alive the memory, preserve the memory perhaps. Izvučemo pouke, learn lessons. That comes up a bit later as well, but again, that's an important one thing to know, to learn lessons. Najrazornijeg sukoba. The best sort of collocation, I think, with sukob is like a conflict, a devastating conflict. So I would avoid saying a destructive conflict. Okay, that doesn't sound quite so. Destructive, we're perhaps more likely to use as an adjective with things like he's got like a destructive influence, destructive tendencies. But yeah, with a conflict, go with something like devastating. Novio history, I would say recent history. We wouldn't really say newer history, maybe more contemporary history, but recent's a sort of a very quick, pithy solution. Again, da se zajednički, just simply together, so that together, suprotstavimo bilo kakvom pokušaju. Okay, so what do you do to attempts? You counter attempts, you can resist attempts. Those are the two I've given you there. One other small thing I would also point out here that I didn't mark originally. So this word relativizacija stravičnih zločina. This word relativizacija, attempts to relativize. I mean, you can say that in English. It sounds ugly to me, but I guess that you can use it. It's interesting that the Russians speak about this sort of thing a lot. This is a message they're always sort of repeating, how that we should sort of resist attempts to. Now, what they say is to whitewash like the crimes committed in the Second World War. They use the word обеление, so whitewashing. So that might I use that. That's what I almost always use with the Russians when they speak. So that might be an interesting alternative to have to relativize. Okay, so and I realize relativizacija doesn't mean to whitewash, but in the context, it's a very similar idea. So just again, bear that one in mind. Again, stravičnih zločina. So again, I've given you here one alternative: heinous crimes. Dastardly crimes is another alternative. And then here again we have the idea of lessons learned. So this is, what was it before? Povučenih pouka. What was it you said before? Izvučemo pouku, something like that. So you've got naučenih lekcija. So that's again classic sort of lessons learned. Okay, and then this paragraph, I've just given you how, again, perhaps the pithiest way to just reflect this whole sentence here. So Serbia, neither in terms of territory nor population, is a big country. Just with this sort of thing, you've got to remember, you can get maybe confused with all the negatives. So, you have to remember, just at the end, is a big country. You don't put any more nots, okay, because you've done that with the neither and the nor. So neither in terms of so I don't think you have to go to the whole length of going neither in terms of its territory nor in terms of its population. This is a quicker way of doing it. Also, ne spada u red velikih država. Okay, so I think you can just say, if you're in a hurry, it's not a big country. Perhaps if you want to get to really reflect the exact meaning, it's like cannot be considered a big country, isn't considered a big country. But again, I think you'd be perfectly entitled to just see it. Just say is not a big country. Okay, and then here, okay, UN General Assembly. It's a very important place for us. Now here's okay. So I put for gde imali imaju pravo. So to get that idea of the imali, I think you want to say something. So I think even small. Now the thing is here, it's funny. So usually when I go from Jedi into English, I'm looking for ways where you can save time, words that are redundant, words that you can skip. Here, it's a rare occasion where I think you actually have to add a word in from English, because in the charter they talk about the equality of all nations, large and small. So I think you can't. I think obviously in Jedi here in the Serbian dialect you can just say Mali, like to express the idea of the smaller nations. But I think in English on this occasion, you've actually got to add that. Okay, I think you have to say the small nations are entitled and are able to freely. Okay, so we've got this little expression here. Iznesu svoje stavove. So again, this is they can articulate their positions, shall we say, or again they can set them forth, lay them out. I da ih argumentovano brane. So as I say, this little section made me think a little bit. So I've put a little star, and then I've sort of given a bit of an explanation at the bottom of the page, where I say maybe the most natural way of expressing this in English would be to plead their case and defend it. I think that's how the best way of putting that maybe in English. You could also say maybe to argue their case and defend it. And what troubles me most in this little phrase, this word argumentovano. It's a really weird sort of adverb here, isn't it? And how to sort of convey that. And as I say, I think when you say plead or argue to start with, that really already reflects that notion, which is what I say here. Here, the word plead effectively reflects the idea of argumentovano. I mean, you could say, to defend it with arguments if you really were desperate to get that notion in. But here, I think, is one of those instances where you have to get away maybe from the original, how the original is expressed, and think, again, how would you express that in English and sound most natural? Upravo iz tog razloga, so just for that very reason, that very sort of expresses the upravo. Okay, this is just straightforward here. Danas obratim u ime Republike Serbia, so I'm addressing you. And then here, čvrsto privržena, so just a couple of alternatives for čvrsto, firmly committed, steadfastly committed. I use steadfast a lot, for example, when I interpret from Russian. Debatu koju danas vodimo, again, this can just be compressed into just today's debate, in virtual format. You don't need the debate that we are conducting today, you don't need all that, it's all redundant, just today's debate. Govori o situaciji, so again, I think, in its, what is he saying? Today's debate in virtual format in itself sufficiently attests to the situation that we're going through, or I guess you could say just reflects the situation, but attests to is generally a very good solution to be able to use. Okay, so it's a very handy, it's a very good speech actually. There's some very good, interesting stuff there. I may come back to it in future episodes when I do the Serbian dialect of Jedi. So yeah, well, I hope you learned a few more interesting tricks of the trade. If you enjoyed the episode, please do smash the thumbs up button. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. Remember to follow me on the Interpretation Station LinkedIn group. That's where I keep all my files, all the stuff that I've done before, all these one-page annotated notes. You can find all the vocabulary there. Obviously, it means you have to open up a LinkedIn account if you don't already do it, and it's just another social network account to add to your already large list of them. But I think, for me, LinkedIn, this is the best way of doing this. So go on, find me on LinkedIn, find the Interpretation Station group, and that's it. So, actually, it's not quite it, because I've just remembered Now, this is now 6 hours after I filmed that previous bit. Jumping forward in time quickly. Yes, I've got to remember to say that you remember in the last Wham Bam, thank you, Roland episode when we did Bosnia, I had a picture, a still from a film, okay, when I was trying to express the notion of cripple and paralyze. And I said, what special mention for whoever gets the name of the film. Do you remember it? So that film obviously was Misery. That was, of course, the infamous scene where I think her name is Kathy Bates basically hobbles. She smashes the ankles of the author, who she's his greatest fan. So yes, she cripples him. So I've done something similar, by the way, haven't I? A few minutes ago. Anyone who can give me the name of that film, again, you'll get a special mention next time round. So yes, that person was Rafael Gasto. He's actually the father of the father of one of my daughter's friends at school. So Rafael, nice one. Ladies and gentlemen, episode 35 of the Interpretation Station is adjourned.